Elijah Mays once said, "I believe everyone was born into the world to do something unique and distinctive." I have been fortunate enough to have opportunities which have allowed me to discover my purpose and enabled me to fulfill it. Unfortunately, everyone has not had that same opportunity. Expanding how we understand education, building community, impacting and improving lives, promoting HBCUs, and encouraging lifelong learning. Dean Talk brings together various people to discuss topics which are critical to the improvement of education and equality in America. I am your host, Arwayne Woodson, and welcome to this episode of Dean Talk. Hello, everybody. I am very excited today. It is our first session for our Education Week, which we're having this week. So we have today, we have tomorrow a Black History panel with some amazing scholars from across the country. And then Saturday, I'm teaching a class that, of course, you have to register for, but it's going to be on leveraging your brand. Information on everything is on my website at rwaynewoodson.com. So as an educator, as someone who went to college, as someone who worked at a college, as someone who's area of specialty is enrollment management, and that includes all of that stuff that happens in that admissions process. I am excited to have this conversation today on the college admission process. It came about because a number of people have expressed some questions and thoughts to me about how to successfully apply, what that process really looks like. For many high school students, the process of applying to college just seems daunting and overwhelming, and certainly can get the best of some people. And especially now when we're in this COVID-19 environment where, you don't have really the access to things. So if your high school's virtual, you might not have the access to the staff that you normally would, your counselor, your teachers. Colleges and universities, a lot of them are not right now having visitation days or visitation weekends. And those are great opportunities when you're interested in a school to go in and learn as much about the school as you can. And so in this current climate, where some of those things are not options, we still have to apply to college if we're going. We still have to complete that process. And so I decided that I would do a show as part of my Dean Talk Education Week for Black History Month on that college admissions process. It has changed quite a bit. There are many schools right now that are not requiring ACT and SATs scores because we are not able to access some of those opportunities right now and some of those test centers. And so that is a plus for those of you who may not test well. I was one of those people. Pretty good academic record, had lots of extracurricular activities, but when I was not a good test taker. And so that was probably when I applied to college many years ago, my number one fear. So as we go through this session, I want to make sure that if you have questions, you just pop them in that chat box and I will, of course, answer them as we go. There's some information I want to share, and then I want to make sure that if you have questions, that we make sure that we get those questions answered. We don't want people, families, or students to leave here and not have the answers that they may need for this process. So, I have a list of things over here I'm going to bring up, and then I'll answer your questions. But if they pop up during the time, I'll make sure that I get to them as we go. So the first thing is, what is a college application? Seems like a simple question, but many people, and I've experienced this in my career, just kind of look at that application, fill it out, don't really think much about it, and don't really realize impact. So your college application is in many cases your first impression with the university. So what you want to make sure of is that things are spelled correctly, that it's legible if it's a handwritten document. Many schools, I'm so glad, are now on this electronic method, and that is great. But even if it's electronic, you want to make sure things are spelled correctly, that the information is accurate. You want to make sure that you present your best self in that document. Now, some of you may have some grade challenges, or there might have been hiccups in your process. We don't want to sugarcoat those. You want to be clear about them. But if they ask for personal statements, make sure you put that in there. I have experienced students in my career that have had significant family life changes, family structure changes, health issues. They've battled things in the family, or there have been some other challenges. Make sure you make them aware of that. Or even if you've had a hiccup and then you corrected all of that. So let's say your freshman year and part of your sophomore year in high school, you were great. Then right around that second semester, sophomore year and into your junior year, there were some challenges. And then you turned it around towards the end. Address that. Make sure that they are aware of what caused that and how you corrected that action. Because those types of things will help you as individuals are reviewing those documents. Now, I want to just bring up to some people, I get this question all the time, do people really go through these applications? The answer is yes. Individuals do go through these applications. Now that's a plus because it's a person reading it and not some computer that's just being input information to make decisions. But the downside of that is if you're at a school where you get 6, 7, 8, 9,000 applications a year, you need to make your best impression quickly because they're not going to, on that initial run, spend hours reviewing your application. So you want to make sure whatever is your best you put out there. Some things you can do to help. If you're interested in a specific institution, contact people that work in the department that you're interested in. So if you are, for instance, a biology major, try to reach out to the head of biology or some of the professors at the institution. Ask some questions. If you're close enough to the school, try to see if you can meet with them. Even in this climate, most administrators and faculty and staff have virtual access. So that meeting might be a virtual meeting, but that's a great time to really get to know the school and for them to get to know you. And that's important because then when your application comes up, they'll have something to go on besides just what's on paper. But that paper document, and I say paper, whether it's electronic or actually a handwritten document, that document is important. Because if it's inaccurate or if they find that it's inaccurate, that can really challenge your admission. And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, you'll get a letter that says you have not met our admissions requirements, or we have decided not to approve your admission, or those type of things. There are a lot of things that can impact that. One of the top ones is incorrect information. Make sure that your information meets the deadlines. That is the second thing that I want to address. The deadlines have been set because they're important. And you know, I hate to say it, but in life, a lot of the time we get extensions or we're really struggling, we're trying our best and we don't meet these deadlines. But admissions teams set those deadlines because of all of the things that go into the process. So it's not just reviewing your document. In addition to reviewing everybody's document, there are other things in that process that, you know, many students and parents are not aware of. They have to look at funding. If you're going to need financial aid, you want to get in there early so that you can get as much financial aid as you qualify for. If you are an athlete or other things, they need to get that application done in the Office of Admissions so they can work with the other department, be it athletics or music or whatever, to make sure that everything is needed before you arrive. The other thing is many people do not submit their FAFSA information early enough in the process. The FAFSA is critical in the admissions process because that is how you will get your federal aid allotment. And if you wait to arrive on the campus before you fill out a FAFSA, a few things can happen. One, there's going to be a delay because those documents are not processed immediately. And if you are not applying or enrolling in an institution that allows students to stay on campus while that process is being completed, you might have to return home until that information is received by the institution. So, for instance, now that FAFSA is up and running and people are applying and completing it and getting information and their institutions are receiving what they need, do your FAFSA now. You can always add schools later. So let's say you decide to, and I always, you know, like my HBCUs, So let's say you're planning to go to, I don't know, South Carolina State University, and then you change and you decide to go to Claflin. You can add Claflin later in the process. But what you don't want to do is start that FAFSA application after you get there. The other thing is schools have a certain amount of funding to work with. And so if your documents are not completed and submitted on time, then you might have just cut yourself out of some available funding. And then what will happen is you have what we call a gap, and you will have to figure out how to maneuver that gap. And sometimes even taking out student loans does not fill that gap. There are parents that have to take out loans. You might have something still to pay out of pocket. I've had students that have had to work all kinds of things in order to make sure that they're meeting those requirements. So those are things that you really want to think about when you're completing that application. So let's just delve into what that application is. So of course, your transcripts. You need to have your transcripts as part of that application packet. Now, if you're a senior and you're applying early, and we understand that your final transcript will come after the semester, after that second semester is over for you. But then you need to send an unofficial so they have something to work with. Now, let me just put a little pin right here. You can be offered a provisional acceptance based on that unofficial transcript that you have submitted, or even if it's official but not complete, you can receive at that time a provisional acceptance. But what we don't want to do, and I have seen this unfortunately from students across the country, is, oh, I've already got in, so this semester doesn't matter. That is the worst thing you can do. Well, one of the worst things you can do. Because an institution can rescind their offer of acceptance. And unfortunately, I've had students that has happened to, that, either I mentor or I'm working with through one of our Woodson Associate programs, that have had those admissions rescinded because that last semester, I don't know what was happening that just caused them to just not meet the mark at all. They can rescind that. You don't want that to happen. You also don't want to get in a situation where there is some type of remediation needed when you get there. And by remediation, I mean, preparation courses. You want to be able to dive straight into that first year. So make sure that that transcript has been received. I always tell parents and students who are looking at college, the Office of Admissions staff should be some of your best friends. If you are down to that school that you really want to go to, make sure you're emailing regularly. Make sure that you have contacted the people in that department, because sometimes the people in the department can go work with admissions on your packet. If they say, R. Wayne Woodson has applied to be a mathematics major and we really think he has potential, I have spoken to him several times, where is the status of his application packet? That does make a difference. And it's not favoritism. It is sometimes that person that you've been speaking to sees some potential that might not be in that packet on paper or on that computer. And that's critical. And just, that is really how a large part of life works. That people meet folks, you have professional connections, you have personal connections, and those connections open doors. Now, at the end of the day, you still have to be qualified to do the job, but those things do open doors. And it's the same in the college admissions process. If we have 10 open positions, for instance, let's say in the sociology major, and we have 20 applicants that meet the criteria, there's going to have to be some way that we dive and cut down that number. And by knowing someone in that department, or, if they have summer programs, and we may have those this summer, who knows in this climate, and you've attended some of those, and the faculty and staff know you, or if you know someone at the school who can, advocate on your behalf, a student or someone who works there, those things are important and can make a big difference. So you have the transcript. Now, like I said, some schools are not requiring in this COVID-19 pandemic ACT or SAT scores. However, if they do require that, then you need to contact the school or look on their website and see how they look at those scores. Some just use them for some placement criteria. Some actually use them as a part of the admissions process. Then you need to figure out, if you don't do well that first time, how does the school review multiple retakes of those types of exams? So for instance, you have to take the ACT twice. Do they average those two scores, or do they take the better of the two? That's important, because if they take the higher of the two, that may be higher than that average. Well, we know it'll be higher, but that will work in your favor. And then check. I am very proud of the way our schools are updating their websites so regularly in this pandemic. So a lot of this information now is on the website. So check it and see. Go to the admissions page and see what the criteria are. Now, I want to address one misconception. If you don't think that, a four-year institution is best for you, or perhaps you don't even think that you are ready at this point to attend a four-year institution, there are many community colleges across this country that are providing excellent, excellent educational opportunities. And there is no shame in needing to go or wanting to go to a community college. And I get concerned. I work in the higher ed space 95% of the time, and I get concerned when people are shaming individuals from going to community colleges. You might be interested in a field that does not require a four-year degree, and a community college may be the best option for you. You may feel that you have some deficiencies. You might need some more work in math or some more work in English, or your high school GPA is not where you want it. And you feel that there's a community college program that will help you get there. Okay, I would recommend in those situations going to a community college, but still doing your research and still making sure that these application criteria are met. And then when you're in that first year, talk to the people in the administration of school and say, I am really interested in going and completing a bachelor's degree at the end of this associate's. They will work with you. And I have not encountered any community college staff or faculty that refuse to work with their students. They can even perhaps give you some extracurricular elective courses that would help you when you get to the college, the four-year college, that might even make that time shorter. I know many students who have an associate's degree and finish at that four-year institution much quicker. Many four-year institutions right now have accelerated degree programs for people who come with associates. So there are some benefits to going to a community college. Or you might just have a field that only needs a two-year degree, and that is fine. And some community colleges are now expanding their offerings. They have certificate programs and a lot of things. So do your research. Applying to college can be expensive, especially if you don't have waivers. And just think, if you want to apply to 10 schools and the applications are $30 a piece, we're at $300. So do your research. Other parts that are important in that application. Some schools are still requiring personal statements. Now, personal statements are interesting to me because many people just write about something that they think is of interest to the person. The reviewer, I would defer on this to my colleagues, but my recommendation would be to utilize that personal statement to highlight the strengths about you, your academic performance, and your potential for collegiate work. This is the perfect example of when you can, make yourself shine. By, one of my aunts when I was growing up said, if you put your dirty laundry out there first, no one can do it for you. So if you have some bad grades, address that in the personal statement. And like I said earlier, if there have been life circumstances that have contributed to that. I've had students, some in the foster care system, and they've moved, from house to home in that process, and that has impacted academic performance. Discuss that in that statement, but then also discuss how those challenges have helped you grow. You never want to dwell on the negative. use that time because people will read that statement. If you have to do recommendations, some schools have stopped recommendations. I also think recommendations are interesting because I don't know anyone who's going to have someone write a recommendation that's going to write them a bad one. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose. But ask the person who is doing the recommendation to highlight some specifics about you, your academics, or your ability to complete college work. So if you're an athlete in high school, ask your coach or the head of the athletic department if they will do your recommendation and discuss how you've been able to balance your academics with the exceptionally, strenuous workout and game schedule. If you're in a music program in high school, have one of those people, the chair or the choir or band director, address what you have done as a leader or address how you have managed to balance academics in that schedule. But make sure that people are not just writing a recommendation saying you're wonderful, and I've done it for some. I have some template recommendation letters, and then I just adapt them as I need. I would ask that you, when you're having those high school recommendations done, that you ask the people to highlight specifics. Now, you don't want to tell them exactly what to highlight, but make sure the people can highlight your best. If you've done academic clubs or other things on in your high school, get some of those people to write the recommendations because those people have spent extra time with you, usually both in that school day and afterwards or on weekends. So they have a really good understanding of your character, your ability. Excellent people. So what are some other things that we look for in an application? What is your major going to be? We are in a highly STEM evolved academic environment right now. So that's science, technology, engineering, math. However, we have a number of liberal arts institutions, and some of those programs have low enrollment. So like if you're interested in being a lawyer, English and history are great majors for that. So I always tell people, when parents always ask me, what do you think my child should major in? Something they enjoy. Because what you don't want to do is spend this time in college or at a university or at a technical school or at a community college studying something that you do not want to do. Or studying something that you don't want to do long term, or studying something that is not directly aligned with where you're going. So if you want to be a doctor, for instance, you want to make sure that you have those core science courses in your discipline. So those are things to think about. Your major is very important. The other thing is, what is your GPA? Some schools have hard, fast, cut off GPA requirements. So if you're a junior, this is the perfect time to try to work on some of that. Some schools, for instance, don't take any students below a 2.0 or below a 2.5. So if you know that in the junior year, you have a little time to work on that. Some schools have, what we consider an option where they will let you in provisionally. So what does that do? That will get you in, it will get you started. However, there are a number of criteria you have to meet either in that first semester or in that first year that will keep you in the program. So as I'm doing this presentation, if you're on, please share and encourage people to look at the video when it's over too, because I always put these up on my YouTube and it stays on my Facebook for a while, and then I switch it all to YouTube, and everything is at that same tag that's by my name, Dr. Woodson 2020. So that's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything is the same thing. So why is the application important? Because most of the time, the people have never seen you. So, when I was at my last on-campus institution, if we get 5, 6, 7,000 applications, even our recruiters, most of the time have not met many of those students. Now, I am so glad that we have the Black College app. And that application allows you with one swoop to apply to a number of schools that are HBCUs. Now, there's also another college app, but I want to focus on the Black College app right now. Many of our young people are interested in HBCUs. They are not sure. There's so much interpretation of the ability of our institutions. HBCUs are amazing. They meet every criteria of any other institution. So that app has a number of institutions that have signed up to be a part of the program, and you can apply to those schools with that one application. Now, what I would recommend is getting the app or either getting the other college app, looking at what schools are on there and doing some online research. Now, I did want to address athletics. I also want to address the arts. Many HBCUs have arts programs with scholarship funding, with the ability for you to be in the choirs or in the bands and many of those extracurricular activities. Just remember, I would recommend the first thing you do, send an email to the choir director. So, if you're interested in going to school, for instance, Mississippi Valley State University, Dr. Brandon Cash is there. Go online and see if you can find his email. Send him an email and say, I'm interested in coming to your institution. I really want to sing in the choir. I sung in the choir here in high school. Ask, are there scholarships available? Ask, what are the criteria? Ask how many choirs they have. Now, some choir directors have some policies around scholarships. When I was still an on-campus choir director, my general policy was that I did not provide scholarships to first-year students because I was waiting for them to show their dedication to the program. But that's not the case at every school. I was fortunate when I started my undergrad at Morehouse, I had a music scholarship through my entire enrollment at the institution. And that was a great benefit. So check with those people. If you play an instrument and you're fairly good at it, contact the band director. Now, the faculty member who's over those ensembles may forward you to one of their student leaders. That is not a negative thing. We often defer to our student leaders because that's part of leadership training. And those are the people that you will interact with the most when you're there. So ask some questions. And this is for anybody who's attempting to go to a college. We all have Instagram. Everybody has all these social media platforms. Utilize your platforms for access. And I always use HBCUs, and sometimes not, but predominantly do. Our HBCUs, many of them have royal courts. They have a Mr. and Mrs. whatever it is an institution. See if you can find their Instagram. Ask them some questions. The student leaders on a campus, be it with the SGA, the royal court, any auxiliary, any of the extra programs, band, choir, those students can answer a lot of your questions very directly. So if you're interested, what is the residence hall life on a campus? They can answer those types of questions. Why did they attend? What is it like? If you're interested, what is a social aspect of the campus? What is a cafeteria? Find out that information. Because what you don't want to do is apply to a school because it looked good, and then you get there and you're miserable. You don't want that. So when I went to school, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a lot of those options. So we had, college tours, and you would just get on the bus for a week and we visit as many colleges as we could. But now you have the ability to go online and research any institution you want to go to. And you can do it instantly. So you don't have to call or fill out a card and then wait for a packet to come to you. You can do that immediately. And that's a great benefit of the internet. That's a great benefit of social media. You can find email addresses for faculty and staff online. So do your research. That is just as important as the application. So what are some things you don't want to do in the application process? And I'm going to be very direct. One of the things you do not want to do is lie on the application. You never want to do that. Even if you are doing it to try to cover up some negative things that you think will be automatically disqualifying, you don't want to lie on that application. Be honest. Now, there's a way for you to be honest and not as negative, but be honest. Fill out every question accurately. Don't leave blanks. Don't put misspellings on there. Don't leave out critical information. Take your time. Many online applications even have a save and return later feature. Sometimes you need to do that. You might not have all the information you need right there to answer it accurately. Save it. Come back to it. But don't rush through it. And I say that because I know even like sometimes these online job sites, people just rush through it. And then they hit send, and then they realize that there was misspellings, that they might have left stuff off, and often cannot go back and review it. And often, even in these online portals, it will stop right in and say, once this is submitted, you cannot make corrections or changes. Are you sure you want to submit it? There is no shame and no problem with reviewing that thing as many times as you need to review it. Because remember, again, this is your first impression in many cases with the institution. And I have unfortunately seen small things that have stopped people from being accepted. And when I say small, I mean, one time I was dealing with, a family, and the student put in that they had a 2.34 instead of a 3.24. Another student had forgotten to submit some of the attachments. Now, many times admission staff will email and say your application is incomplete, we need these documents. But if you're in a situation where there are a certain number of slots for programs, or they only have this many students that they will take, you do not want that to be the case if you can avoid it. You don't want to be going back and forth trying to find things and resend them and doing all that work if you could have just done it on the front end. I always recommend when I'm dealing with students who are about to start this process, pull all the documents that you will need for your application submission and keep them wherever you're going to do it. And then you won't have to get a folder and just put all the documents in that folder. And anytime you go to an application, you just have to go and sort through. Mind you, that will also serve you well in college when there are not people around to make sure that things are on task and you need to be organized. Organization is key to success, So what are some other things that we want to make sure we do? Follow up. If you know that it has been weeks since you have heard from the institution, write them or call and say, hi, this is Arwayne Woodson. I submitted my application online about 4 weeks ago and I haven't heard anything. I was calling to make sure you all received it. And if you can, tell me what the status is, or if there's anything else needed. 99% of the time, they'll be more than glad to answer questions. Now, they might take your information down and call you back because they might have to go find your file, or somebody else in the office may have it and may need to pull it. But remember, this is your education. This is your future, and you need to be on top of it. It is not always that people are unprofessional. It is not always that people are intentionally avoiding you. Sometimes it's just the sheer amount of work that people are doing, which can be overwhelming. And I always go back to that. If we have 7,000 students and there are 3 people who work in that office reviewing applications, that means each of us have over 2,000 applications that we're trying to do. So, present your best self. Now, there are other things that we are taught, I was taught when I was younger, that I do now. When you hear back send a card to the admissions staff and say, thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it. I'm so glad I got this acceptance letter. Or even if you are rejected, see if the institution is one that will provide you some feedback on what caused your application to not be accepted. If you know you submitted everything and you know this is the school you want to go to, they might offer some insight. They might say, well, you know, some of the grades were a little shaky and didn't quite meet our requirements, but we partner with such and such community college. And, you know, if you go there, we have a reciprocal relationship, which means, you know, you can take courses back and forth. And that may be a way for you to stay on track and still end up getting your 4-year degree from the institution that you want to go to. But never just give up. No one is going to fight more for your education than you will. You are your own #1 advocate. So I received a couple of questions. One question says, what if you've been accepted and you decide you want to go to another school? So that happened to me. I was admitted and accepted to an institution. I paid my enrollment deposit and all of that, and then decided I want to go to Morehouse. Common courtesy says to let the first institution know that you have made a decision to go to another institution. You don't want to really just not say anything and then have them expecting you to attend and you just don't show up. So say something. If it's a financial thing and your packet is good enough, there might be a way that they can work with you to match the other institution. But, you know, go where your heart is telling you to go. I'm never going to encourage anyone to go somewhere their heart isn't saying. But you do want to tell them. You also want to make sure that you shift over your financial aid, because you don't want to get to the second institution if the first one has already started preparing to receive your funds, and then get to the second institution and say, we don't have access. So, you know, transparency is amazing. And most of the time, people are not going to be offended because you made a decision that was best for you. So just say something to the first institution. This other question is, my grades are really low. Oh, my grades are really low and I'm not sure if I'll get in. Well, I'm not sure what institution you're going to, and I'm not sure what low means. And just everybody knows, I am getting some of these questions and I'm not putting them up on the screen because I don't want to put people's information out in case they type something that shouldn't be shared with everybody. So I don't know what low means, and I'm not sure what institution you're going to. If low means, you know, a 1.0, that could be a real big issue for most institutions. But if low means a 2.0 or a 2.1 or a 2.2, like I said earlier, there might be some other admissions options for you, like provisional admission or full admission with specific conditions after the first year. Reach out to the institutions that you're interested in. Find an email address or call and see what they say. It might not be low. So I have had students who have contacted me because they had low GPAs because they were 3.0s. And they went to academic magnet schools and everybody there had a 4.0 or higher. That might not be low for the institution that you're going to. So reach out to the specific institution. You know, and if you have additional questions, I do want to make sure that I put my website up here, and there's an email address on that website that will allow you to gain access to me, and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions in the future as well. So, you know, that is my website, and on there is an email address. It's the info@rwaynewoodson.com. You can send me your questions or concerns, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. because this is not just a one-shot deal. I'm excited about this. There are a couple of more questions, and then I'm going to share some other information, and we will be good for tonight. So the next question is, I want to go to more than 4 schools. What should I do? So the big question is, can you afford to apply to more than 4 schools? That's the number one question. If you can't, you might need to knock that down. If you can afford to apply to 4, you can meet their requirements, you can get all the deadlines met. I have no problems, and I would never discourage anyone from applying to more than 1 school. People thought I was just strange because I didn't do that. But that is what a lot of people do. And then they compare offers. I mean, we all see on social media, these people like, I've been accepted to over 100 schools. That's a lot for me. But if you have 4 or 5 schools, figure out which one you want to go to or apply to all of them. First, make sure they have your major. For instance, if you want to study nursing and the program does not have a nursing program, they have no pathway to a nursing program, they have no collaborative agreement with a school of nursing, then perhaps that's not the institution for you. Some schools do not have nursing programs or do not have specific programs, but they have a pathway for you to get there at the graduate level. So you want to research that. So those are all the questions. I do want to bring up a couple of things. So this is Education Week. I am very excited that it's Education Week. I'm an educator. I work with education. With that being said, tomorrow we have a Black History panel. It will be live on both my YouTube and my Facebook. We have some amazing scholars that are going to be with us to talk about Black history. And there's some others that are not on this flyer that will be with us too. So join us. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Make sure you're there. A couple other announcements. We are looking for sponsors for Dean Talk. If you want to be a sponsor, visit my website, rwaynewoodson.com. Shoot me an email. We will be glad to discuss those options with you. You can also donate to the scholarship fund at the Woodson Fund via my website. And the final announcement, I always been reminded to put up my social media so that people can reach me. I do answer all of these. You will get a response back. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of course, my YouTube. It's all Dr. Woodson 2020. Feel free to reach out at any time, or of course, the number one way to reach me is always email. And this month, we are being sponsored by Java 365. I'm encouraging everyone. I am a coffee advocate, addicted to coffee. This coffee is amazing, and if you use Woodson20 as the promo code, you will get a discount, and they will contribute to our scholarship fund. So thank you everyone for your questions. Thank you for participating. I'm so excited, and we'll see you next time.